How's it going today, guys? This is Riley BD with Sounds of Urban. We're going to be stepping a little out of our comfort zone today, doing a album review of Yelawolf's latest record, Trial by Fire. If you'd like to read any of our current reviews, our text reviews, you can find them at www.soundsofurban.com. We have a lot of editorials and other bloggy stuff on there. So, yeah, go check that out. So, in terms of Yelawolf, Yelawolf recently, I'd say maybe 2013, 2014 is when he really started incorporating more elements of rock and country into his music, aside from his arena rap EP, which he released in 2008, which is a very good EP, very balanced in terms of the genres that he mixed in, He did very well with it. I thought that was a really good EP. Probably one of my favorites personally for, an EP that had 5 or 6 tracks on it. And then he had released Love Story in 2015, which I felt was a really good album. I felt that he really brought everything together very well on the album. I didn't think that he put too much energy into one genre. It all kind of came together very well, I thought. Kind of, in cut from the same fabric as a Kid Rock or Run DMC, but I would say more the execution was better than what you would hear from somebody like Kid Rock. Run DMC, that might be kind of up in the air. That statement might be kind of up in the air to compare them. But I think that he really hit his mark on trying to create a sound that brought together rock, country, and rap, and not relying too heavily on any three of those genres, kind of really pulling it together, although it would still be considered a rap album. And so I really liked that album. I know it got mixed reviews. A lot of people thought that he kind of he failed in his execution of it. They didn't feel that I think a lot of them just more or less came in expecting typical Yelawolf, what we had heard from him on earlier albums, Trunk Muzik, maybe Radioactive, even though I wasn't a big fan of that one. But that was the mold that he was in before, and he kind of broke the mold when Love Story came out, and I was a fan of it. A lot of people weren't. I understand. There was an argument that his track list was way too long. I believe it was 18 or 19 songs on it. I would agree with that. There was a few filler songs on there that could have been left off, but that's about where my criticism of that album ends. When it comes to his next album, I have a few more criticisms. When it comes to his latest Trial by Fire album, I have a few criticisms when it comes to this one. I will say that it is kind of it has a similar style as Love Story. It might be a little more folk and country inspired rather than rock, which Love Story felt more inspired by. It was rock. But one thing about this album that it doesn't have that Love Story did have, the comparisons can all be made, but one thing that it seems to be missing, is balance. The album just doesn't feel very balanced in the genres. It doesn't feel like he really balances everything out very well. It feels like it kind of misses its mark in what it's trying to do. One thing I will say is that I know Yelawolf had taken off time last year. He had some sort of kind of meltdown, although I don't want to call it that because I don't know what the details are, but as many of us know, he had a meltdown on stage and thrown his equipment around and deleted his Instagram and changed his name to MWA and even opened up a little bit about those issues, about how he kind of almost took off all of 2016 because of personal issues. And so you have to wonder when those things happen. Love Story has been it's been in the making for quite a while. I think he first started talking about, or sorry, not Love Story. Trial of Fire has been in the making for quite a while. He first started discussing the making of it about, I think, back in 2015, soon after Love Story was released. So it's been in the making for a couple of years now. And I don't know, to me, although it had been a couple years, the album felt kind of rushed, in my opinion. It felt like, listening to it, it just kind of felt like an album where, it was kind of like get in the studio and we'll figure it out, rather than like having a real aim for what he was trying to do on this one. It didn't feel as refined and clean and direct as Love Story, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that the album doesn't have its high points. Songs like Violin and True to Yourself, I felt were really good tracks. They really painted a good picture. I felt like they really were pulled together really well. Songs like Daylight, which he released, I think it was last September 2016, as well as Shadows, I feel like just those are some of the best composed country rap songs I've ever heard in my life. Though definitely, I think those are, I would say Daylight is one of my favorite songs I've ever heard by Yelawolf. And Shadows, is pretty close too. I felt like they both just felt like they were, they really were composed very well, and a lot of time and energy and dedication were put into them, and focus. And they both kind of had a similar vibe. And I was surprised to find, after hearing those songs and, this album being released so much later after those songs were, over a year after those songs were released, to just find that the majority of the rest of the album just didn't really fit the vibe of those songs. It felt like, you hear those songs and then he kind of deviates from that path that he had, which is interesting because the elements are still there, there's still the rock and country elements, but it feels so far removed from that sound. And it might be because he recorded those songs over a year ago, and he probably got back in the studio a while later, and so it felt like it was kind of, those songs were kind of a fragment of something else, whereas the other songs on the album felt like they were something newer, something that he had probably recorded more recently. Either that or it's the other way around. Maybe the other tracks were recorded a long time ago, but they don't feel like Daylight and Shadows, as opposed to the rest of the album, they didn't feel like they were kind of made for the same album, which is strange considering that they are on the same album, and they have a similar vibe, I guess, to them. But I was surprised to find that I was very excited for this album, and I think that Yelawolf did a very good job on some of the songs. I think some of the vocalists that he brought in did a really good job. I really loved the vocals on a lot of the tracks. Violin is definitely one that stands out for sure. But overall, I felt like, even with how it was composed with the vocalists and everything, I still feel like they didn't really do it justice, because it still kind of didn't feel like a professional album in a sense. It felt more like a bunch of fragments of different projects or different at different points in time. And that's just kind of how I felt about it. It's weird. It is weird to say that, considering it is all cut from the same cloth. But you can still have those same elements and still come out with something completely different. And that's one thing that Love Story had. It kind of had this cohesiveness. It all kind of came together as one album, rather than being a bunch of random pieces all over the place. It was this intricate puzzle, that really came together, whereas this seems a little bit more random and strewn together in a way that doesn't really fit. But with that being said, this is an album that definitely has its own aim. It still has its own aim. It's definitely still an album that is formatted in the same way as Love Story, but it's different for sure. It's different. You can tell that the emotions that were put into it were different, and it does feel kind of rushed, unfortunately. So that's my review. That's my thoughts. You guys can let me know how you feel in the comments. You can look at Sounds of Urban online at www.soundsofurban.com. We have some stuff for everyone on there. So yeah, go check it out. Hopefully we'll get more of these reviews up soon. And yeah, because this feels like a lot of fun, guys. I hope you keep checking in for more of these reviews. Thanks.